welcome to the first episode of The Digital Dish.
I'm Lois Coatney, and I lead the development of a new collaboration platform.
I'm Jeanne Cuff. I implement tools to help customers understand their digital environment.
And I'm Julie Fernandez. I work with clients trying to improve all aspects of their HR and people development.
We're a group of women who work for a global digital firm, ISG, and we've created a new podcast, Digital Dish, which explores what it means to be a woman in the digital world.
Our goal is to create a space for women's voices and experiences in digital.
Julie, what's on your list for things you want to talk about, you feel like you want to talk about today?
Sure. Yeah. When I think about women in digital and what we might do, as a group or as we launch some dialogue here, to me, it's definitely a professional network, right? So we're all in the workplace to succeed and advance. And maybe we do that best as women and in a modern world different than it's been done before. Maybe we collaborate more, grandstand less. Maybe we multitask more and, are less satisfied with single giant missions. We learn differently. We coach differently. I think there's just so much that we can share and learn from each other. That's what I'm excited about.
Cool. I like that idea. Lois, what does it mean to you?
Well, I think, we're at a point in time where there's a lot of energy. And, when I talk to my daughter who's, thinking about what she wants to do, and I think about, how it was so different when I first was starting out, and so many great avenues, so many great possibilities that she's going to have available to her. But, at the same time, there are so many things that we can do collectively with our counterparts. Thinking about, I was just talking to someone in Dallas this morning who has all these great contacts and ideas in the Dallas area, and she had ideas about how we could do some panels, we could get together with different firms, we could, just have some great energy between us as partners. And I think, like you were talking, Julie, it's not about grandstanding or competition or how do I get there first. It's about how do we collectively really make a difference for ourselves and for our families and for those around us. And we all have the same goal. And I think we all are great. Women are great at helping each other move forward. And that's what has me excited about this.
That's great. So what I found, really what you guys just said to me, made me really think. I'm pretty excited because I get involved with this Women in IT breakfast in Chicago, really strong digital community. And I first did a speech with them about a year ago, and everybody kept saying, Jeanne, you should do a speech. You should do a speech. I'm like, I've been there, done that. But in truth, I got up there and I talked about my past, how I got involved in technology and things like that. And I'm telling you, I didn't know anybody was interested, and I felt like a rock star afterwards. Everybody wanted to talk to me, like, oh, that was great what you said, and I believe that so it was really exciting. So since then, I attend these Women in IT breakfasts. Later on, we're going to have an interview with Bridgit McMullen, and this is, again, reaching out to other women of every age in the community, in the digital community. She's at a company called Upfront Work, and she's going to talk about skills versus titles. So I think you'll find her discussion about this really interesting and fits right in with what we're talking about.
Well, I think something about that is really cool because I'm definitely maybe the least techie of us. While, everything around me and in my workplace is all about digital enablement and technology, I'm not a typical IT worker. I align myself more with the function and with HR. And so to me, it's been an important concept that, some of us are in it and we're deep in it, but we wouldn't necessarily say it defines us, and we need to know about it, but we can feel a little silly sometimes and a little bit out of place and unsure of exactly how digital we are.
Yeah, well, HR is deep into it with the data.
For sure.
Right there. That's where all the data analysis is going on. So that's pretty interesting too. Yeah.
But I think that's really key because I never wanted to be a technologist, nor am I a technologist today. But I think what's the power of what we can do now in our areas that we are passionate about, to leverage technology, to leverage new ways of working, to leverage what are the new enablers out there to really make a difference in the business area or in the function that we are passionate about. So I think when we talk about a woman in digital, it's not a technologist, although you can be a technologist, but it's also those who have really figured out how to harness those cool new ways to do work and really bring it to power in what they're doing. So I think it's a world of possibilities.
For sure.
Well, with that, we're going to go to our interview and enjoy. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I have Bridgit McMullen from Upfront Work. Did I say your name right, Bridgit?
You got it.
Great. Bridgit and I met at a Women in IT breakfast in Chicago. Really active Chicago organization for women in technology. I really liked Bridgit's speech on skills versus title. I wanted to let you go through it a little bit more, Bridgit, again, and because there's some things that I was particularly interested in, and I'll stop and we'll just talk about it. So if you want to go through your talking point.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, they keep the format really loose.
Yeah.
So they just tell you to keep it under 5 minutes and speak about your experience that's relevant to the audience. The audience meaning a bunch of women in tech. So for me, I wanted to combine skills that were new, something that maybe somebody didn't really think of, as well as something they could take away and immediately apply. Because while I would love to stand up there and talk about my business, it doesn't really help people that are coming there to listen.
Well, because everybody's different.
Absolutely.
And everybody's in a different stage of their career. And that's what's really cool about that environment.
Yeah. So the title of the topic was Plan Now for Future You. You know, that's all around this theme. You mentioned my company, Upfront Work. We're constantly thinking about what are the things that you need to do up front to avoid so you don't have these pitfalls down the line. So I'm always kind of planning. And I gave basically 3 major tips. And the insight came from today, 55% of U.S. workers are still dissatisfied with their job. And a lot of times I, thought, well, maybe they're not in the right role or they don't know what they want to do. But the other statistics say that on average, an individual changes their job 12 times over their career.
Wow.
So people aren't happy, but they're doing something about it. So where's the disconnect? If you're changing 12 times, you'd think you'd be happy at some point.
So, okay, I'm going to stop you there and ask you a quick question.
Sure.
Average person, like we're talking a career span of 30 years or 20?
So there's different, depending on kind of your generation, there's different statistics. But what I did was I kind of averaged any age.
Okay.
So you could say 30 years.
Wow.
Whether you're just starting your career or you're at your end of your career.
But to me, that doesn't seem like that long for technology.
No, it's not. And I still think that seeing the heads in the room shake up and down was something that was validating that people still feel this way. Sometimes you get these statistics. You never really know,
Right.
But the 12 times in a career, I would say tech is probably going to increase that.
Yeah.
To be 15, 20. If you're at a place longer than 3 years, you're stale, right? So for me, what I found, the problem wasn't that people don't know what they want. It's that they don't plan for it. I gave 3 tips that if people could do today, they could, have a better future them, right? Future you. So the 3 tips that you mentioned, one of them was focusing on skills versus titles. The second being track your wins. And the third, find connectors.
I like that one.
Within each one of those, I break out specifics, and I'd be happy to kind of go in depth depending on what you think is interesting to the audience here.
Yeah. I think from a digital perspective,
Yeah.
our people are really interested. I'm personally very interested. I'm a technology person. So let's break down the skills versus titles, because I think that's a really interesting concept. And it's particularly pertinent to those of us in technology and in the digital.
Absolutely. I personally struggled with this because I got to a point in my career where I either was going to go the track of director, VP, go up that way, or trying to think about different industries or better and better companies. And I found that, one, every time you would apply for a role, if you hadn't that title, there was this pushback on, well, you've never been X, how could you be it?
Right.
So there's that challenge. In addition, when I started consulting with Upfront Work, I had a lot of exposure to executives that when I started to really challenge them on working, there was this disconnect because they had been managing teams for so long that there was almost you lose what you don't use.
Yeah.
And I found that to be a really interesting problem. So I think not knowing what title will be in the future, especially as technology changes. The example I gave was my dad was a stockbroker in the 80s. At the time, if you asked someone in the 80s, a stockbroker was a very reliable career. Everything was changed by computers. While today, especially in digital, different titles like growth manager and all of these things are new, that to just go after a title, you're completely missing the why behind what you're doing.
Yeah, I like that concept a lot because I think I went to grad school in technology management and I had a lot of friends of mine who were focused on the title, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to be a VP because I really like the day-to-day operations. I'm more interested in how do we expand this? How do I get involved with more areas of digital technology and how it affects our lives? So that's why I like that speech so much. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think there's just a reality that new programs are coming up all the time, that you can take a certification here, there, and it's only going to help you.
Yeah.
If you're dropping thousands of dollars and you don't have a way to make a job, maybe not. But I think it's definitely something that when you don't know where you want to go, you can focus on that and do that really well.
Yeah.
And then you have that for life, regardless what your job is.
That's true. Talk to me a little bit about, I like the track wins, but I get it.
Yeah, of course.
I think everybody gets that. But I think it's an important reminder. What I'm really interested in is when you talked about finding connectors. I think that's a really key point, especially in the world of digital with everybody focused on their phone or their laptop. So talk to me a little bit about how you see that.
This was something that, when you do consulting, people are everything to you. That's who hires me. It's not a company. It's somebody I know who knows somebody. And again, being in this position where I was connecting with more executives, I thought very falsely that when you got to a director, VP level, you could take it easy. Like take it easy. No, it was the exact opposite. These women were hustling more than any mid-level manager I'd ever seen. I was so incredibly impressed. Starting, dinners, volunteering, running extra organizations. I couldn't believe how much effort they put. And it's because their social capital is everything.
Yeah.
And they would share that with me. They would share, like, my social capital, I can get a job tomorrow because they can call multiple people. And I think that's something that takes a long time to groom, be authentic, and really find people that can actually hire you or connect you versus a nice person you meet at a networking event that's a friend. And it's not really that next step.
Well, in our business too, it's not just a hiring job. It's, as a consultant, what's your next gig that you're going to work?
Yes.
Or who's the next company who wants to buy into what you're talking about with the company like ISG. Like, I talk to people all the time about the cool stuff we do to help them manage their outsourcing thing. But I think it's the same concept, finding the connector and then making sure that, you're focused on them, and they work so hard. I'm telling you, my volunteer work exhausts me.
Yeah, and it's the line of all you need is one person to say yes. When I first started consulting, I did the nerdy, okay, how do other consultants get leads that land jobs? It's like advertising.
Yeah.
You're spending all this budget money, but you don't know what 50% actually leads to a sale or whatever. And to me, if you're developing these relationships and you're learning from these people, you're giving, you're sharing, it's a win no matter what, because somewhere down the line, you were kind to somebody that will help you in the long run. I always say, give first, ask second. That was a talk from a woman who was sharing about networking. I loved that. That stuck with me.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, so tell me a little bit more about your company before we wrap things up.
It's a MBA for product people, so super nerdy product people.
Oh, okay.
And we had this theory that, particularly with product management, companies were bringing product managers on later in development, especially in the innovation front or small businesses. I'd hire an engineer or a designer before a product manager because I'm getting a deliverable X. Mm-hmm. The reality was every company was so slow because of that.
Yeah.
And we wanted to provide, how do you get a product manager up front? How do you get support so these businesses can rapidly increase their speed to market?
Which is so important in the digital world. Like, that's everything.
It's everything. Yes.
All right. Well, Bridgit, I didn't know if you want to say anything else, but I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about it and share your ideas, because I think they're really interesting, and appreciate you being a guest on what we're calling the Digital Dish.
First of all, I commend you so much for doing this versus you mentioned earlier to me that it could have been something like a webinar and you wanted to make it fun, like a podcast.
Yeah.
I also wanted to thank you for just being kind and coming up to me after the talk and saying you liked it. You have no idea how much that meant to me. A 5-minute talk took a lot of prep. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Bridgit. I appreciate your time. Bye-bye.
So that was really interesting. And, there's a few things that she talked about that really hit home to me. And that was around, those titles versus skills. And, when I think about titles, I think, gosh, is that what's really important? I guess a title, when you've been with a company for a long time, a title and advancement of titles is important from maybe a respect in your learning and growing. But if you think about today's, I think there were some statistics that she talked about how many different jobs or roles that you have in your career. And is really the goal to increase your title, or is really the goal to really take on new and advancing skills? Because as I think about looking for folks to join, on my team, I'm not really looking for what titles they've had. I've looked at what are the skills that they bring to the team, because that's what's really important. And I'm thinking that that's an area that we really need to think about as we develop ourselves and as we think about what we want to do. What are those skills that we should focus on getting either from what we're doing today or in our next role? I don't know. What do you think, Julie?
I had the same reaction, especially since as an HR practitioner, the whole notion of skills versus titles definitely caught my attention. And the first thing I found myself wondering is, what skills matter most? So, okay, if it's not titles, we know what titles folks think are important. What skills matter most? And I went out and I found a survey that Indeed.com did, and they analyzed like millions of job postings over 6 months in order to figure out which are the top 5. And so the top 5, according to them, were leadership, interpersonal, problem solving, motivation or being motivated, and efficient. And that list actually kind of resonated. They had 10 more on the list, but that list kind of resonated to me,
Yeah, I think when we're thinking about women in digital, and what's interesting is there's not really, I don't know if I call it a digital skill on that list, but at the same time, problem solving is so critical, because how do you utilize technologies? How do you utilize new ways of working to really address the challenge that you have in front of you? And when I think about for women who are advancing their careers in a digital line of work or working with technologies, problem solving and to be able to best communicate with their coworkers or their teams is critically important to be able to get their messaging across.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. And it seems like, as schools focus on new techniques to create analytical thinkers and the workplace is looking for predictive analytics, like, why is that still the hardest skill set to find? It shouldn't be that hard. It seems to be the one thing that leaders are missing when they're trying to be more strategic, is having kind of that problem solving bench strength, right? Which is crazy. And as we think about digital, the interpersonal one also caught my attention, because you're getting to the point where written and oral communication is great, but people struggle just with casual conversations these days. And so is technology even helping that, right? Social media has people texting each other and firing things off left and right, but they're more isolated than ever. And so interpersonal skills may be harder to develop.
Yeah, that's true. Interpersonal skills and the ability to communicate effectively probably takes on a number of facets, both verbally communicating, written, being able to communicate effectively, what's the right decorum that you have in those sort of communications across your team using different technologies and doing that communication.
Leadership skills now are needed whether you're in a management role or not. And I'm not sure that, that's universally recognized. And organizations are getting flatter. There's more self-directed work, teams, there's more self-service. And so, if you don't have the right leadership skills, there isn't a hall monitor around anymore in every organization at any place. So I wasn't surprised to see that at the top of the list.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of getting back to titles, a title doesn't necessarily reflect that a person has fantastic leadership skills. And I think the more that we think about what are those aspects of what we do every day, the sort of great experiences that we've had working with teams, being able to lead projects, lead initiatives, working with, different folks, even globally, those are the skills that I think are going to be in high demand. I think we think less about titles and we really think more about those skills that we can bring to bear.
Hey, so here's maybe a fun one to end with. How about motivation? So I know I didn't wake up this morning thinking I'd love to try doing a podcast. And yet we're trying to reach people in different ways, right? So it's like, well, this is a way to meet people where they're at. And it takes a lot of motivation to actually swallow the bitter pill.
And it takes a little bit of risk and the ability to say, just throw yourself out there. And I think we're probably two great examples of that. So thanks. I really enjoyed this, Julie, chatting about this. And I'm looking forward to doing it next time.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to push stop now and hope he can edit the hell out of this.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you to Lois Coatney and Julie Fernandez for that wrap-up on motivation. This is Jeanne Cuff from ISG One. Thanks for listening to our first Digital Dish podcast. It's part of the ISG One's Women in Digital program. Have a great day and talk to you soon. Thanks.